Hi there, I'm Colin and this is the Action Figure Resource video channel. The place for all your action figure news, reviews, tutorials and guides. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Series 3 of the Toy Biz Iron Man animated line of action figures released in 1995. Don't forget to watch the video to the end to get your free downloadable Iron Man action figure collector's guide. Also subscribe below, click on the bell icon to be informed of all my future videos and smash that like button. Okay, so let's get on with today's video.
actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.
Series 3 of the Toy Biz Iron Man animated series featured 7 figures. There was the US Agent figure, Tony Stark with his armor carrying suitcase, Arctic Armor Iron Man with removable armor and launching claw action, Hulkbuster Iron Man with power removable armor, Sentry with cape and battle staff, and Dreadknight with lance firing action. And lastly, Titanium Man with retractable blade action. The first figure we're going to look at is one that was never released and was withdrawn from this line at the last moment, and that was the US Agent figure. The figure was rumoured that it was going to be released later in either Series 4 or 5. However, due to the cutback on Series 4 and the cancellation of Series 5, it never appeared or was released. The US Agent figure is probably the most famous of all the Toy Biz figures, and it has a long backstory. According to reports from Toy Biz, at the time approximately 100 prototypes had been made and about 50 of these are said to be in circulation. These were released loose in baggies with a shield and the standard ID badge, but the ID badge did not have the image sticker of the US Agent. The same figure was retooled by Toy Biz, given a new head sculpt and armour, and was to be released as Living Blast in Series 5. But of course Series 5 was cancelled altogether. As a result, it began to look like this figure would never see the light of day. But it was eventually released in the X-Men Mutant Armour line as Astral Armour Xavier, with translucent red plastic, and was short packed with only 1 figure per case. The only difference between the figure that was finally released and the Living Laser figure that was due to be released in Series 5 was that this figure had an open left hand. But the story doesn't end there. In early 1997, a foreign release US Agent began to surface on eBay and other sites. This figure was unique because it had all the markings of an official Toy Biz figure, including a sequential production number from Series 3. It also came on an official looking Toy Biz backing card that even had the character's bio information on the reverse side. These figures were promoted as a limited edition figure from a company called Elegant Way. They were apparently part of a wristwatch promotion, and it is believed that around 10,000 of these were produced before Toy Biz were able to put an embargo on the company producing any more and having all the produced figures destroyed. However, months after Toy Biz embargo, these figures were still trickling out through Asia and can still be picked up on eBay and other auction sites to this day. The prototype figure is extremely rare and hard to find, with only 50 to 100 of them being in circulation. As a result, these sell for between $450 and $750. The foreign release figure, however, is a lot easier to come across, with approximately 10,000 having been produced. As a result, these sell for between $30 and $100. Due to this figure being withdrawn from the series, there were only 6 figures available in the line. Sentry, Dreadknight and Titanium were packed 2 to a case. This led to a misconception that Sentry, Dreadknight and Titanium Man would be rarer and harder to find than the others. However, due to the large production run, this was not the case, and all were readily available and can still be bought to this day. The next figure we're looking at today is the Arctic Armor Iron Man with removable and launching claw action. The Arctic Armor Iron Man only appeared in one issue of the comic, and then only for a few panels. Nevertheless, Toy Biz decided to include him. He had articulation on the shoulders, elbows, hips and knees, and a swivel head. This figure was very cool looking, with a full silver suit. He came with a flamethrower and a spring-loaded claw which would shoot out from his hand. However, this feature didn't work properly on many of the figures, and this was an ongoing problem with a lot of the Toy Biz figures. The next figure is Sentry with his cape and battle staff. Sentry was an alien who led the terrorizing scatter race. However, when Scarlet Witch and Thought came across him, he was suffering from amnesia and joined a quest to stop the scatter race from invading Earth. Soon after this, he disappeared into obscurity, bringing an end to his short-lived career in the Marvel Universe. Sentry was a well-sculpted figure with a base grey body and a contrast of a light blue and dark blue armour. He had the standard articulation in his arms, elbows, legs and knees, and a swivel head. The only accessories he came with were his battle staff and his cape. The figure did not feature any action feature. Next is the Hulkbuster. The Hulkbuster is one of the most popular figures in the Iron Man line. In fact, it's one of the better creations of Toy Biz in all their action figure lines. After his first run-in with the Jolly Green Giant, Stark decided to build his Hulkbuster armor, and he was eternally grateful he did, particularly when the Hulk arrived at the SE Gamma bomb factory. The Hulkbuster exosuit enabled Iron Man to go a few rounds with the formidable Hulk. This was a huge figure, and despite the lack of attachments and accessories, it was also one of the most popular of the Iron Man variants that Toy Biz ever produced. The figure had a yellow and red colour scheme. The paint application was rather poor, with a lot of overlapping on the paint and bleeding to other parts of the figure. He had hinged articulation on the arms, elbows, knees and legs, but there was no articulation on his head. The armour for this figure fitted surprisingly well compared to most of the other figures in this line. With his armour on, he stood even higher than the Toy Biz Hulk figure and was a very formidable looking character. Next up, we have the Titanium Man with retractable blade action. Titanium Man was the communist answer to the capitalist Iron Man, and Boris Bolsky hoped that the defeat of Iron Man at the hands of the communist Titanium Man would propel his political career. Iron Man and Titanium Man clashed many times, but due to Stark's superior armour, he thrashed Titanium Man each time. The figure had a bulky body with a dark green body and olive green armour. He had standard articulation on the arms, elbows, knees and legs, but like Hulkbuster, he had no articulation on the head. He also came with a retractable saw blade that attached to his arm. The next figure is Tony Stark with his armour carrying suitcase. This figure was a base figure of Tony Stark, allowing for the armour from any of the other figures to be attached to him. In his suitcase, he came with 2 of Iron Man's shin pads and his faceplate. However, these were only the front halves of the shin pads and the faceplate. So when looked at from the rear, it looks rather strange. Best to put the armour from the other figures on this to give him a better and proper look. The suitcase could open up and the spare shin pads and the faceplate would fit inside this. Toy Biz were also going to release a civilian Tony Stark with a completely different head sculpt and his civilian car. However, these were withdrawn at the last minute along with the US agent figure. Okay, the last figure in this series is the Dreadknight with lance firing action. This figure is based on the character of Professor Nathan Garrett, the Black Knight, who genetically created a winged horse and an arsenal of weapons. When he died, his winged horse escaped and flew away and was later found by the scientist Bram Velsing, who worked with Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom discovered that Bram Velsing was plotting against him, and as a punishment, he fused his face mask to his face so he could never remove it. Velsing therefore took up the weapons like those of the Black Knight and became known as the criminal Dreadknight. This was an unusual but colourful looking figure. His lance had a spring action so that when released by a trigger, the end of his lance would shoot out. But like so many of the other action features in this line, it only lasted a short time before it would break. He also came with a blue skull-headed shield which clipped onto his arm. He had articulation on his legs, knees, arms, elbows and head. Most of these figures can still be picked up on the secondary market for fairly reasonable prices. The main figure to look out for, as previously mentioned, is the US agent. The foreign release US agent, of which there are approximately 10,000 available, usually sell for between $30 to $100. However, the much rarer and harder to find prototype US agent figure, of which there are believed to be only of between 50 to 100 available, usually sell for between $450 and $750. The Arctic Armour Iron Man sells for between $12 to $25 mint on the card and loose for between $2 to $10. We then have the Sentry figure which sells $8 to $25 mint on the card and loose for between $8 to $10. However, I did find one AFA graded figure that had been sold for as high as $150. Next is the Hulkbuster. The Hulkbuster mint on the card sells for between $12 to $80 and loose between $3 to $18. The Titanium Man is $10 to $26 mint on the card and loose for $10 to $15. Tony Stark sells for $15 to $30 mint on the card and loose $8 to $15. This figure is also one I found that had sold for $150 with an AFA grading. Next is Dreadknight. Dreadknight mint on the card is between $8 to $30 and loose. I couldn't find any samples of this that had recently sold loose. However, going by prices of most of the others, I would suggest between $2 to $5 would be a reasonable price for this figure loose. Please note that all the prices mentioned here were correct at the time of making this video in July 2020. These are not an offer or solicitation to buy these figures at these prices, but are for information purposes only. Don't forget to download your Iron Man action figure collector's guide. Subscribe below, click on the bell icon to be informed of my future videos, and smash that like button. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, bye for now.
actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.